Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Running Tales podcast, where we celebrate the extraordinary stories of everyday runners. In this week's episode, our last of 2024, I spoke to Natalie Crawford, a runner who's achieved some really truly unbelievable things in this little sport of ours. But first, let's just go over a little bit of housekeeping. So as you're probably aware, Running Tales is a part of the Everyday Athlete podcast network, and that's something that we like to think is pretty unique in what it does, combining a host of different podcasts and voices all together to create a powerful series of conversations about running. If you've not listened to the other podcasts on the network, then I really do recommend that you check them out. We've got 7 different podcasts now, and there's more to come next year. And they include the new Enduring Minds podcast, a fascinating discussion around mental health and running. And on the other side of things, this network doesn't shy away from the big questions, like whether you should have pineapple on pizza, or what the best aid station snack is. So listen, please, if you like what we do, please give us a positive rating, a 5-star rating, and a review wherever you listen. It helps other people to find the podcast. Everybody says that. Well, that's because it's true. And also tell all your running buddies about the community that we're creating here, because it does make a massive difference, and we want other people to hear these fantastic stories. Thank you so much. Now, let's get to today's episode with Natalie Crawford. After suffering from ill health and shortness of breath all her life, Natalie was finally diagnosed with cystic fibrosis when she was 28. It's a condition which impairs the normal clearance of mucus from the lungs, and although medicine has steadily improved, until recently it came with a low life expectancy in the early to mid-30s. But Natalie's response to that diagnosis was to fight it, and running, something which she hadn't done previously at all, became her weapon of choice. Now, what she's achieved since then is nothing short of incredible. This is a really, truly inspiring story, and I hope that you find it just as life-affirming as I did. So without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Natalie Crawford, which I started by asking her to explain what cystic fibrosis is and the effects that it has on those who have it.
Cystic fibrosis is probably one of the most complex diseases. It's a genetic, life-limiting disease that primarily affects the lungs and digestive system, but it's to do with a faulty gene called the CFTR, and the function of that is to move sodium and water throughout the body. So obviously we need that for all of our organs to function, and without that it produces thick, sticky mucus. So that's why the lungs are primarily affected, because it clogs up the lungs, making it hard to breathe. But also bacteria is then attracted to the mucus, sticks on, and then that causes frequent infections. And these infections are often resistant to antibiotics. So they're not like the normal infections where people say they've got a chest infection and it will be gone within 2 weeks. This is like 18 months onwards, these infections. And obviously over the course of living with CF, we're given frequent antibiotics, but over time our body then becomes resistant to them and they don't work. So it's finding other ways to manage the condition. So it's not just the lungs, but the lungs are a major part. Breathing is something none of us, well, those without CF don't have to think about breathing.
Granted, isn't it?
It's how often do you think, I have to breathe okay today, or I'm not able to breathe. Everyone wakes up, they take a breath, and they get on with their day. So with cystic fibrosis, how I see it is, on a good day, that's like you guys walking around with a cold or not feeling 100%. So there's never a day where we don't feel well, although I will say I feel well today. But today's a good day, I feel well, but my sinuses, I've got sinusitis. My lungs are really clogged because I've not done any exercise this morning. And I've been up 3 hours in the night coughing. That's a good night. So every night I go to sleep and I cough for probably a good 30 to 40 minutes before I fall asleep, and then I'll wake up throughout the night. And that's a lot of the time because I'm lying flat and the mucus is then building up through the night. But obviously digestive system as well, that becomes clogged, our bowels. So there's issues with bowels, blocked bowels, where exercise helps that because we're moving. So everything's moving. The pancreas as well. So we develop CF related diabetes because the pancreas gets blocked and can't work sufficiently. Also the liver becomes blocked with mucus as well. So I have CF related liver disease, which then affects treatment for my lungs. So my liver can't sustain antibiotics. It freaks out. It can't handle, even to take paracetamol, it will flip my liver over the edge. So for that reason, I've looked into holistic therapies, and I've gone down a different pathway to conventional medicine. It works for me, and it's creating a balance between my liver and my lungs, because you get to a point and it's like, well, which organ do I want to save, really? What's most important? We need both, don't we? So it's always a fine line of trying to balance both. But in general, cystic fibrosis affects every part of us. Joints, mobility. I'm hypermobile and have a lot of joint issues. So that as well comes into play, especially with exercise. A lot of the time, because we're coughing all the time, it affects posture. So we're quite often, if you see someone with cystic fibrosis, especially when they're running, I'm going to draw attention to that now and everyone will look at me running. I'm quite hunched over. So naturally my posture is very hunched because it hurts to hold a correct posture, because thoracically I'm tight all the time. And it's easier to lean forward because it doesn't hurt.
So it's almost like, for me, if I'm running a really tough race, a half marathon as quick as I can, or a marathon, and I'm tired and my breathing's getting harder, then my form will my form's not great anyway.
Yeah, that's it.
And I will start to hunch.
Yeah.
But you're like that from the very start.
That's it. So it's really important from childhood to kind of be aware of that. So my son, who's 13, has cystic fibrosis as well. So to try and encourage him, breathing exercises, and to be aware of his posture, because over time it becomes more painful and it does hurt. And if we have periods of time where we are really unwell, and even just to get out of bed is a struggle, then the last thing you want to do is be doing postural exercises to try and stay upright when it's really, really painful. So that's a big part as well, and does become very difficult with exercise because we're always so insanely tight. So
and this is something that people are born with.
So 1 in 25 people are carriers of the CF gene, and then what happens is if you have two carriers come together, produce a child with CF. So a lot of carriers quite often can have mild symptoms, sinusitis possibly, but it's, as I say with CF, it's an invisible condition. You wouldn't know that you're a carrier unless you're tested. So the chances of being a carrier is 1 in 25. And then if you have CF yourself, it's a 50% chance of passing that gene on. So,
And without, just because I want to set the scene and kind of get into how kind of, and I know you'll play this down because it's what you do, but how amazing your running story is. And I don't want to be like morbid about it, but there is kind of, in terms of expectation, there is a life expectation generally around CF, isn't there?
There is, yeah. And it's not something I like to talk about, but it's there, it's hanging over us. And for me as well, having a son with CF, I like to, the reality is it's there. We're all going to die, all of us. None of us know when our time is up. But for us, we do have a number that is printed on us when we're born. It's in the medical textbooks. I was born in 1982, and back then it was classed as a childhood disease because children didn't grow up. They didn't get to see their 16th birthday. There was no treatment. There wasn't even testing. So now there's a heel prick test, which newborn babies have, and that didn't come in until 2007. So that can miss a lot of the rare mutations. But if there is suspicion that there's a baby with CF, you can go on and have further testing. They do a sweat test, it's called. So with the CFTR gene, the issue is with the sodium through the body. So we can't absorb salt. So think of when you're running and you're really dehydrated.
Yeah.
That's us every day. So I have to take salt tablets every day to put the salt back in. Right. When we sweat, the sodium can't be absorbed back into the skin. So we get like salt crystals on our skin, a bit like vampires if you've watched Twilight. And they sparkle.
Yeah.
So
you're taking the advantages where you
can. So I think most people say, oh, it's really disgusting. Like on all of my running clothes, I'll have like all the white stains of salt, and it's not very nice. But I always like to flip it and say it's like I sparkle when I run. It's a positive, isn't it?
Yeah.
It just means that we can eat saltier foods. And that goes with absorption of foods as well. So because we have blockages, digestive system, we can't absorb fats and vitamins. So I eat 5,000 calories a day.
Yeah.
And when I'm marathon training, I have to eat more. So that's another part of CF that people don't always see.
And I know, like, I've heard you sort of talk about this before, where people will talk about because you're quite slender, and people, oh, you've got, I'm really jealous of your figure.
Yeah.
Like, well, it's not actually something that necessarily I'd
it.
I'd like to be able to put on a bit more weight if I could, please.
And to me, right now, I'm probably the biggest I've been. And running has helped that because obviously increasing appetite, building muscle. But growing up, I was like a frail, skinny child. And I do hear women, obviously at my age, talking about they're putting on weight and dieting.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm hoping like with age that I will catch up and go through that stage of moaning about my weight. But sometimes I do say the odd little, oh yeah, that I know what you mean. My tummy's a bit podgy, but it's because I'm bloated from CF. So I work really hard to stay a healthy weight.
Yeah.
And most people with CF have a feeding tube. And I was threatened that just before I started my running journey. If you don't put on weight, then we will go down the route of having a feeding tube, because they like us with CF to have a little bit of extra weight in case of illness, because we lose weight so quickly because our bodies are working so hard all the time. They say a person with CF their bodies are working 5 times harder on a daily basis just to breathe and just to keep ticking over. So the energy that's being used is so much more, which when we're poorly, then we're losing weight quick because our bodies are just working so hard to keep ticking over. So it can be quite difficult eating so much, but we do it.
And so let's start talking about the running part of your journey and so on, because I mean, my first sort of thought is you have this condition. You have to eat more to put on any weight at all. So burning more is really a good idea. You're losing or your sort of sodium, your salt's not working properly, you're coughing, you can't run in the same way naturally immediately that somebody else can. What made you think, actually, I want to do running? Because, all those things might make people run
Yeah.
million miles the opposite way.
I was never sporty. I hated sport.
Yeah.
Growing up, my head was always in a book. I was always I was always told that I wasn't very good at sport. And for me, I'm all, like I said to you earlier, I'm always looking for a challenge, and I always like to prove a point and kind of, I guess, write a good story. So for me, being diagnosed with cystic fibrosis later, um, I was 28 when I was diagnosed, so I grew up
Oh, wow.
not knowing that I had CF. Um, when I looked for a story to explore CF, what it was, how people lived, it's quite morbid, but everything was death and dying and sick and pity. There was no positive stories. There was nothing out there.
Yeah.
And
Like the best you could do is survive for as long as
yeah,
you can.
that's it. And we just have to keep ticking over. You just have to keep doing your treatments, going to hospital, being in hospital, coming home, going back into hospital, avoiding everybody because people are germy and they're a threat to you. And stay in a bubble, stay away from everyone because it's dangerous out there. And that's not how I want to live. And with having a son with CF as well, I didn't want him to live like that.
Yeah.
And this life is beautiful, whether you're sick or well, there's beauty out there, and the world is such a big place. There's so much to explore, and running's a great way to do that. So for me, I kind of wanted to change the narrative of cystic fibrosis.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be a pity story. I would go places. For example, I went to a family wedding and I was introduced as the sick daughter. This is the one that's dying. This is the one, she's not very well. And I didn't want my children hearing that because I've not brought them up to view their mum as someone that's sick or dying, because I'm not. We're living our best life.
Yeah.
And we're thriving as a family, the three of us. There is no sadness. There's no sadness in our house. We wake up every day and I teach them to be thankful, whether you're healthy or you're feeling a bit poorly or under the weather, everything passes.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I just wanted to change the narrative and give other parents and other people with CF that are searching for a story something positive, so that we know that we Google everything and it's negative, don't we?
Yeah.
We Google anything and we've got a headache and that's it. But it's the worst thing.
Yeah.
But to Google cystic fibrosis, for me, having children, growing up there at the age now where they have Googled that, and we've had to have that discussion. And I think in the whole journey, that's been the hardest. I've never hidden anything from them, but it's to try and put the positive side of it, that they can always, I knew that when they'd get to an age and they'd Google it, that I could say, look at me, go and take a look at my medals that we've proudly got on every wall. And they can look at that and they can see me and they can see every day how hard I work. And I never stop working to be well. And they can see that, but they can also see that this is what happens. And I'm 42 now. And when I reached 40 2 years ago, 5% of the population with CF had reached 40. So for me, that was a huge milestone. And that was something that we really did celebrate.
Yeah.
But my son, who is 13, will never have to doubt getting to 40. He knows that's possible. And it's not something that we need to fear. So it was just, when you've got a baby and you've been told that they've got a life-limiting illness, And I was told when I was diagnosed, you probably won't see your children start school. You won't see them graduate. Like, you will have no quality of life. And now I've got one that's just started sixth form and one that's in secondary school. You know that anything is possible, and you do just have to work extra hard to, like we do with all of our dreams. Like, my dream is to stay alive. My dream is to live a life that I'm proud of, and my children can look at me and be proud and know that, yeah, mum did this. She did this for us. She worked hard with no regrets. So,
And how much was it kind of, it sounds a little bit like, obviously, trying to do really positive stuff, which is great, but also it sounds like there's a sort of certain element of, do you know what, Sia, do you know what, world who's telling me I'm the sick child at weddings? You can get stuff, screw you, I'm going to live my life and do whatever I want to do. And no one's going to tell me that I can't.
Yeah, that's it. And I think it's a bit of a, um, fingers up to my PE teacher as well, back in middle school, that that didn't believe in me. I was in pain, I did cough, I was poorly, and I was never going to win anything sporty at school, but gave me permission to go and sit in the library to read a book. Maybe back then, if things would have been different and I was encouraged to just try, but it was straight away, you're sick, so you can't do that. You're unwell, so that's okay. Just quietly scurry off to the library. And that's what I did. And that was how I coped. But in a way, that gave me power for when I did have my diagnosis, because it taught me to read, to research, to investigate, and to look further and deeper into what else is out there, rather than the medical textbook that told me you have no life, you're going to be sick, to label me as too sick to do anything, too sick to run. So through my own research, I created a path for other people with CF as well to use exercise as their treatment. And when I spoke to my hospital about it, there was no studies, there was nothing being done to promote exercise. I mean, you think we've got like thick, heavy cement sat on our lungs daily that builds up and up and up, and it doesn't go anywhere, and it's very thick. And the only way you can move that is through movement. So my questions with the doctors was, why aren't we encouraging exercise? Why are we saying go home and rest, don't move? I mean, we have other physiotherapy methods. So my treatment regime takes about 6 hours throughout the day. So it takes a whole chunk of time, which I think as well, with it being an invisible illness, you look at me and think, she looks okay, she must just get up, go for a run, and everything's fine. But as soon as I wake up, I have to do nebulizers. I've got a physiotherapy vest that shakes all the mucus out of my lungs, which I fundraised myself because it's not available on the NHS. So even with things like that, it's researching and looking, how can I best fight this? What can I do? Like, I need to be in control of this. And I'm not just reading the medical textbooks that's saying, take this drug, go home, rest. So it's looking at what we can do. What can we do? What else? What other tools can we put in our toolbox, I guess?
And when you decided to take that first run, to go running, was it just, I'm gonna go for a jog for a mile, half a mile, 5K, whatever it might be, or did you have a sort of goal in place at that point in terms of, I don't know, races or whatever?
Back when I started, I joined the gym, and it was just after my son had been, he grew a really nasty bug called Pseudomonas, which in the CF world, it's one of the scariest bugs. It lingers for a long time. And he started a lot of antibiotics, nebulizers, was in hospital with IVs. And that was a real wake-up call, because obviously it's a risk for me as well. People with CF shouldn't mix
Yeah.
because of cross-infection. So I have a lot of friends with CF and we have to keep 6 feet apart. So you think of COVID,
Yeah.
we live like that every day. We've always lived like that. So to have a son with CF, it's higher risk, and there's probably, from what I know, I think 1, 2 other mothers with CF that have a CF child. So it is very rare and it's more high risk. So the risk was that he could pass that on to me.
Yeah.
Which made me kind of up my game and think, what else can we do? So I joined the gym, started walking on the treadmill. I couldn't even really walk 1K on the treadmill without having a huge coughing fit and drawing attention. And it was awful and I hated it. But I kept going, and I didn't really like exercise. I swam a little bit as a child growing up, but apart from that, exercise was really not my thing at all. And then I met Aaron, who's now my running coach. And he came up to me, and we didn't really know each other. He didn't know I had CF. And he started to question, and I started to educate him on CF.
Yeah.
And he said, have you thought about running? And no, it was never a thing. It was not for me. And we spoke about, at the time, I hadn't been given a great life expectancy. I think at the time I was maybe 30. Yeah, just turned 30.
Yeah.
And they said life expectancy was 36.
Yeah.
So I was going through a bit of a period of grieving for that. Hadn't really accepted it. Knew that I needed to do something, but was feeling a bit lost in the diagnosis and everything. So he said, how about if I help you to beat the odds? If you can just try and run 1K, we'll go further than that and we'll go each. And we got into a conversation. I said, one day I'd love to run a half marathon. I never even thought about a marathon. I mean, only crazy people do that, right? Half marathon's only half crazy. And yeah. So he said, we'll see, but you've got to promise me you'll beat the odds. And he said, we'll have a 5-year contract, and kind of brought in some humor into it. Yeah. So he was just going to keep me alive until I got to the life expectancy, 36, 37, at a push, and we'll see what can happen. And over time, he would come out and run with me, and we'd do one lamppost to the next, and it wasn't even a 5K.
Yeah. And
I cried, it hurt. I coughed up blood. I was very poorly, and we had to keep going back. So it was always, and with my running journey and CF, it's always 2 steps forward, 5 back, start again, on repeat. And it's always like that. And that's okay. It just means that when you get to the point of the finish line that you're aiming for, it's even sweeter. Like it's so much more meaningful because it's taken so much longer. So we gradually built up. And I think we had about 2 years of very slow training. He worked with my team at the hospital. I had my physio come and meet with him. And his initial fear was he would be training me to run and I would drop down dead. That was his fear, because he didn't know anything about CF. Nobody really did. And there was no reports of people with CF running half marathons, that it just didn't happen. So we were on new territory, and we were navigating this journey kind of blind in a way. It was, let's just test, let's see what happens, but how far do we push? So once he got the all clear from the hospital saying it's okay, they were against it. They weren't happy because it hadn't been done. I was fighting a lot of infection. I'd had IVs. I was on a lot of treatment. And it was risky, but I had started to slowly gain weight. My lung function was slowly creeping up. So it was a positive. Once we managed the extra calories, extra salt tablets, And just everything was a test. We didn't know what was happening. We entered the Silverstone half marathon, but unfortunately I grew the nastiest bug ever called Mycobacterium abscessus, and it's a scary bug. And they said to me, the chances are you won't beat this, like this will take you down. So it's a course of 18 months treatment, which is like chemo. So I lost a lot of my hair. People weren't aware. I put hair extensions in. Nobody knew. On the outside, I guess I walked around like everything was fine, but it wasn't. I was being violently sick from the drugs. I was on IVs, so I covered them over and still went into the gym. I had a long hospital stay, which was really tough. And they said my lung function was rapidly declining. My liver was just against everything. And they said it would probably be 18 months before I'd need a liver transplant. But because of the Mycobacterium bug, if I ever needed a lung transplant, it would wipe me off the transplant list because it would be too risky to reinfect new lungs. So that at that point, all I could see was this half marathon. I need to get this done. I need to do this. This is what I've told the children I'm doing. Like, I'm running this and I'm getting a medal. But on the flip side, I was going back to the hospital and they were telling me, you can't do this. You need to stay in this hospital. I was having IVs like 6 times a day through the night. I was nebulizing really strong drugs that made me lose my voice. So for about 2 years, I had a really hoarse voice. And it just ripped the back of my throat. The drugs were so harsh. But I never doubted that I wouldn't come out the other end. I knew that I would. I knew that I had to. I didn't have a choice because I needed this medal. And so we agreed with the hospital that we would put a pause on the longer distances, and we'd just slowly build back up until treatment has finished. And funnily, today is 8 years since I finished treatment and have had the all clear.
Wow.
So today it popped up on my memories to say 8 years ago, and it was 8 years ago on the very same day that I booked my first marathon. So quite a special day, just as a reminder of how far I've come, because I think sometimes now I'm doing really well and I think I forget how scary that was and who I was before that. So it took another couple of years until we were finally well enough to do a half marathon. And that was in 2016. And I ran the Milton Keynes half. So that was my very first half marathon. And looking back at all, so I've ran 31 half marathons now, 4 marathons. I'm not sure how many 10Ks or 5Ks. But I know I'm at 49.
Well, at least 49, at least 49 5Ks.
That's it.
Maybe a part run.
Definitely. So that's very important as well. And looking back, that will still always be the most special race for me because that was the one that I was told I would never do. So I didn't have support from my CF team at the time. They said, you're not well enough to do this. If you run this, you will die. And I switched hospital teams. So I decided I didn't need that negativity. I found a hospital. I'm at Nottingham Hospital now, and they're amazing. And they have always fully supported all of my crazy running ideas. My physio is right behind me. And she said it set the pathway for other patients that have come, that have heard my story and said they want to try running as well. So I think all of that I've been through with being told in every possible avenue, you can't do this isn't for you, it's too risky. How many people now have actually taken that step and thought, well, she's done that, so maybe there is hope.
Where do you think you found, kind of the resilience and the strength and the determination to have that attitude, because I think as runners, we all sort of find moments where we lose our mojo, or we're like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't think I can do this. I'm doubting. I'm doubting myself. Or how am I ever going to do this half marathon, marathon, ultra, whatever it is? And that's kind of natural and human. But you've presumably got that, and then a lot of other stuff stacked on top of it. Where does that sort of, you seem to not be doubting it, despite everybody else, other people in that situation might go, I'm just going to go and hide in the corner.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie and say it's all roses and rainbows and
Yeah,
all of that. It's not. It's, behind the scenes, life is really hard. It's really hard living with CF. It's relentless. There's no days off. There's never a break. If I'm on holiday, I still wake up and I have CF. I still have to work hard. A rest day to me is still doing all of my treatments. It's still gently stretching and doing all of those things to keep me moving.
yeah,
But that's my life, and I now don't know any different. That's just how I live. And I guess for me, I find that strength through my children. I haven't got a choice to give up. I have no option. I have to be okay for them. And I made a promise to myself that I will never let them down. I will always be around, and I'll never let them see me in a dark place. Although I think it's healthy for them to see that life isn't amazing and perfect and that all the time. And strength comes with moving through the struggles and overcoming things. So it's not saying that things are amazing, but it's how we navigate that. And it's the tools that we've got to get through. So I think for them, they're the push. They will always be the push. I have to be okay for them. But in saying that, I also have to create a balance of knowing when to stop, when to rein myself in, to not be selfish in chasing the crazy goals that I do have in my mind, that everything I want to achieve. I think living with CF, it makes you very intense with chasing things and getting out there in life and exploring. And there's so much that I want to do, and there's so much that I want to show my children in experiences and in seeing the world. There's a whole world out there, and none of us have got time to explore it all. But I'm so intense in how passionate I am about living. And for me, when things do get really tough, I look back at all of my friends that I've lost with CF and think I have to live for them. So one of my best friends, Kim, passed away, and she had new lungs, and we always made a pact that when she had her new lungs, she'd run with me. She was never a runner, and she would always be, oh, you're crazy for doing this. I can't believe you're doing that. But she was always my biggest supporter. And I said to her, hold on, you'll get your lungs and you can come and run with me. She said, yep, we'll do that. And she got her new lungs, but unfortunately, time wasn't on her side. And she's got 2 children, same age as mine, that are now living without their mum. And when I have those moments of darkness, of thinking, this isn't fair, this is really hard, like life is really tricky for me, I look at her and I look at her children. I think I have to live for them. I have to give everything. And who am I to moan? Because I wake up every day, and I say this to a lot of my friends. Paul Carpenter, if you're listening, I say that to him. People that, this sounds really awful, but people that are really healthy and wake up and do moan about having an injury, and we all do. That's okay. That's not playing down anyone's injury or illness. But if we wake up and what's the worst? You've got an injury and you can't run for a few weeks. You've woke up and you're alive. Like, you've got that chance. And so many people don't have that. So many people aren't waking up.
Mm.
So I think all of us that do have the opportunity every day we wake up, that's we have to live for those. And it's not a fact of I have to go out and do this run, or oh, we have to go to work, we have bills to pay, we have this to
Yeah.
do, blah, blah, blah. We get to do that. And I think it's changing your mindset and believing that we are so blessed to be here. That's what we have to keep living for.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I think it's almost like the world needs to find the mindset that's been forced upon you in a way
yeah,
by CF. You wouldn't want that condition, you wouldn't wish it on anybody, but it's helped to give you this framing that
that's
could
it.
benefit so many people.
Yeah, I always think it's a blessing and a curse having CF.
Yeah.
It's a blessing because I get to live so fully and I am genuinely happy in life. How many people can really say that?
Yeah.
I don't sweat the small stuff. If I'm in a traffic jam and it's taken ages and you see the road rage,
Yeah.
you're in a queue at Tesco and it's taken ages. What's the point in stressing? Like, I don't sweat the small stuff because it's not worth it. Because there's always someone out there fighting for their life and fighting to breathe. And I think I wake up every day and yeah, I have to cough a few times before I can breathe. And it hurts when I breathe all the time.
Mm.
But I'm here and I'm breathing and I've still got my original set of lungs and they're doing me so proud. Like they are strong. And I'm quite often told by the hospital, it's always the words of they're weak or they're failing or they're struggling.
Mm.
But to me, I think we have to trust our bodies. They know what's best for us. Our bodies are programmed to keep us alive. Sometimes they need a little extra help, but I will never be, I used to be cross at my lungs all the time and I used to be angry and why I'd see someone smoking, why, and it would really annoy me.
Yeah.
That's not fair because I work so hard to keep my lungs strong and they're abusing their lungs. And it's the same with drinking. I don't drink because I've got liver disease. I protect my liver and work so hard. But I think we have to trust our bodies and we do have to learn to love our bodies. And I will never see my body as weak. I think it's a strong body and I'm proud of it. So yeah.
Well, as you sort of hinted at with some of the running, it's a body that's gone through a lot of marathons, a lot of half marathons, and let's if we just rewind again, kind of eight years, you've got through this hard. Love that you've achieved this great thing, kind of against some medical advice as well. And then you thought, you know what, I am going to do twice as far. And I'm guessing it's that spirit of I'm going to take these things on and I'm going to do it again that came through. But how did the training go for that? And am I right in thinking I might be completely wrong here, but am I right in thinking you were the first person with CF to run a marathon?
Yeah. So obviously it's a known fact that boys do better at with CF. Their prognosis is a lot better than women.
Right.
Genetically. So there's always been a few males that have successfully ran marathons, but
Okay.
when we're looking at women and the success rates with life expectancy, especially, women especially don't run. And with CF, we know that in the running community that men do better. Genetically, they're stronger and it works in their favour. So when you look at cystic fibrosis as a woman, the odds are not stacked in your favour. So when I'd researched and read, I was looking for a story. I wanted to see whether it was possible. We'd spoken about a marathon. I'd watched London Marathon like everyone does and thought, yeah, that looks fun.
Yeah.
Might like to do that one day. And that's one thing I never believed that I could do. And Aaron had planted the seed that was possible. And I think with everything, you just need one person to believe in you enough to make it happen. And he's always been the person that's believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, but he's taught me to believe in myself. So over time, he planted a few little seeds of, we could do this. This is possible. But when I researched it, there was nothing with CF. And was this pushing too far? Would I be selfish? And that's the one thing I never wanted to be for my children.
Yeah.
I had to be selfless in thinking, I can do this, but I have to rein myself in. And Aaron's always been the one that's reined me in, because I will push and push and push. And I'm a perfectionist. So if I do something, it has to be right, and I have to be very good at it. Otherwise, I'm doing it all over again.
Yeah.
So I knew that if I was to do this, if I didn't achieve it, I would do it again and again and again until I accomplished it. So when we'd researched, I knew of 3 other ladies worldwide. My friend Emily, who lives in America, and Sabrina, who lives in Alaska. And I'd spoken to them, and they said, yeah, go for it. It hadn't been done in the UK, not that we'd known of. Men had run it, but
yeah.
So at the time, it was when I ran Birmingham, which was my first marathon in 2017. I was the 4th in the world,
Wow.
the 4th woman to run a marathon. So it was a pretty big deal, although I don't really like to think about it like that, because as you know, I'm just a runner, I'm just a mum. It's nothing amazing. But looking back, it was a big deal. It hadn't been done before.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what would happen. I wasn't on any modulator drugs that were coming out they call them life-saving drugs for CF, which I've helped with campaigning, raising awareness over the years. Because I've got a rare mutation of CF, I'm not eligible. So there's 10% of the population with CF that aren't eligible for any of the life-saving drugs that now 90% of the CF population are on. And that's meaning that a lot of them are running now. A lot of them are running marathons. When I went on to then run my second marathon in 2019, which was London, I was given the place by the Cystic Fibrosis Trust, and there wasn't another female with CF that had done that. So for me, especially with my own set of lungs, first set of lungs,
yeah.
That was huge. That was huge in the CF community, and that brought a lot of attention for raising awareness that this is possible.
Yeah.
So for me, I was running that was on the TV. Children with CF are watching that, thinking that could be me one day. And especially for me and my children, I wanted them to see me and know that that's possible.
Yeah. I suspect you are potentially going to be too modest to answer this, but do you see yourself as being a trailblazer, as helping people, encouraging them to do something new and something different, and to change the agenda and the way that people think about CF in terms of how limiting it is?
Yeah, I find it hard to talk about, as you know, the change that I've brought in the CF community. And I do find that difficult, because I just, I'm an everyday runner. I run to stay with my children. But change was needed. I think as we move forward and children born today are given a lot more hope. We've got new drugs. We've got new drugs in the pipeline for the 10% that aren't eligible. Things are coming.
Yeah.
For me, I've always been huge on raising awareness, campaigning, fundraising. And if sharing my story can inspire just one person to make that change and to trust and believe, it's changing the narrative from, we don't want pity, we don't want to be a sad story.
Yeah.
We just want to give hope. And I think when you look out there, the stories are, like I've said, it's the sad stories, the campaigns for cystic fibrosis, are the people that are looking sick, it sells, doesn't it? It does the job. We need the fundraising, we need the money for research so that we all can live a life unlimited.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's just changing the narrative so that when people look at CF, when they Google, if they see my name and Google that, I am classed as an old person in the CF community. I'm 42 now, and I haven't got many friends left that are with us now. So it's my job to keep changing the world, to make it happen. And I do believe that I have done that, although I don't like to talk about it. I do think I did start a huge wave of change for the better.
Yeah. So I find it quite interesting actually, and I think it's a good thing because for people listening now, Natalie runs with myself and Michelle at Park Run. She's part of our Step Forward with Lewis group. We've got a group of people who go park running, and we all know that you have cystic fibrosis, and we know you've done something. We know they're kind of trailblazing and so on, but you don't really talk about it that much with us. You just talk about what everybody else does about running and what you've done today and what we're having for breakfast and all those other strange things that you do at Park Run. How important is it for you to just be Natalie who runs rather than Natalie with cystic fibrosis?
I think that's what I love about Park Run and my running community with you guys, because there's never been any judgment. It was a huge step for me to come to Park Run and to step into a community of runners that are pretty good runners. But also, like we said before, everyone's on their own journey.
Yeah.
But to come to Park Run and know that you guys know the background to some extent. Obviously, I don't. There's still people there that aren't aware.
Yeah.
But we have raised awareness through Park Run with Wear Yellow Day, which has been really good, and people have come and questioned. So I think that's been really helpful to think how can I raise awareness without it being too much, but also how can I join a community of runners and push myself to be really good and the best that I can be without having the pity. And that is something where you guys are great, because you've all seen me, like I've been running, I've coughed up blood, I've puked after races. And you've all looked after me, but without judgment, without the whole, oh, are you okay? Oh, I don't like that.
Yeah.
And we kind of make a joke, especially with my friends, Paul and Pete and Patrick, especially the three Ps in my pod that are my safe people that will take me to races, look after me after the race. And like, what other community can you find where people will genuinely care for you like that? Like, for me, that's huge. I always ran on my own because I was embarrassed to cough because I didn't know if I was going to be sick or cough up blood, or I didn't know how each run would be. And I still don't know that. And I can push a PB at Park Run and be violently sick afterwards, and people will understand that. But also the positive is they will, now that we're all really close, they understand, but so they will then help rein me in. Yeah. So when obviously I'm not with Aaron, who is reining me in constantly and taking care of me, I've got my Park Run community as well that look after me. So, but
this is something that's happening a bit at the moment, isn't it? Because you were probably pushing yourself maybe slightly too hard, and you were almost saying, "Oh, I'm struggling a bit. I'm finding this hard. I'm not enjoying it as much." And I think the thing was just enjoy it again, Natalie. Just come and do a slow one. Come and run.
That's it.
Because we all do it. I run plenty of.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes you're like, I'll run the fastest I can.
That's it. And I think I'm always trying to prove a point. And it's kind of like Aaron said to me, we've done that. We've proved the point. You've ran the half. You've run the marathons. There is nothing left to prove. Now this is your time to just enjoy life and enjoy running for what it is. And it's kind of like I was running to live. And I believe that every step I took, every time I went out for a run, that was adding years to my life. And now I'm at the point where I can just enjoy it for what it is. And yeah, you're right. I did my fourth marathon this year in April. I ran London Marathon, and was on a roll because I then pushed a 10K PB at the Northampton 10K.
Yeah.
A month later. A month after that, I pushed, and I had our good friend Stav pace me to my 25-minute 5K park run time, which I will brag about because that was hard.
Quite right.
And I like to keep up with you boys. And I went on and completed a few more half marathons and was completely burnt out. And my body was screaming at me to stop. But I couldn't. And then you guys have a real good chat to me. And it was Paul again that put things into perspective. We were in the car park after park run. I'd been really upset because I just felt so poorly. I shouldn't have gone to park run. I was coughing up blood. I still tried to run a PB and I was broken. And he said to me, look, we all want you around. Like, it's quite fun having you around, you know. So you really need to stop because there's always going to be another race. There's always going to be another race, but there's not going to be another you. And I think to hear someone else say that to me, that had become a close friend, that had shown that it wasn't all about running. Our community is so much more than that. We all take care of each other, don't we? It's brilliant. And to have them stand there and say, we were due to run rugby half the week later, and he was pacing and I was going to pace with him. He said, I'm not picking you up. I'm not picking you up and you are not running. So you take time out. And I think having that and having them check in with me every single day, it's that kind of everything just fell into place of I can still be in the running community. I can still participate. I can still give. I can volunteer if I can't race. It made it all just make sense. And I think for me, I'm so passionate about helping others, about getting the message across, about living passionately and running passionately and just living a life without regret. We can do that without burning ourselves to the ground, because if I'm not here to give that message to everyone, who is?
I think one of the things that was lovely about that, and one of the reasons that Paul was able to have that conversation with you was, again, because he wasn't doing it from that place of pity, or he wasn't being like the hospital saying you can't do this. You're saying you can do this, and in fact he'll be the first person tagging you into to enter another race and another race and another race. But actually, we're just saying you can do it, but don't do it now.
That's it. And he said and I hadn't even really digested this whole year, in the fact that this has probably been my healthiest year, my most successful year, but also the year that I'm probably most burnt out, because I'm trying to do everything all the time for everyone and myself. And I just, there's always got to be a challenge for me. I have to feel that I'm living. So it's just remembering that we're all human, with or without CF. You need a rest, don't you? You get tired, and that's okay. And I think for me to accept that sometimes I do need to take a rest. For my daughter, she said to me, Mum, can you promise this is the last marathon? Because she's seen me behind the scenes really struggle, and she's seen what it's like when I'm poorly, when I can't get out of bed. And she's seen that, which the world doesn't see. I shut that away, like that's locked away. That isn't shared on social media. But in that sense, I think we're surrounded by social media now where everyone is a run influencer.
Yeah.
Everyone is faking it till they make it. And they're posting the good parts, the parts that look easy, but are they real?
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's remembering that I always set out to share a raw, real version of what CF is.
Yeah.
And what running is. And it's not, I will come out to the world and open, you know me, like I will not do a run with a full face of makeup or stop and, make myself look good. It's not about that. And that's what I want to show to the world, especially for our younger athletes, the young girls like my daughter as well.
Yeah.
We're real, and us in our running community, we're also real. And that's what it's about. So we can look at the run influencers that have ran, I don't know, 50 marathons in 50 days, for example, and look at that and say, why can't I do that? Why? That's not real. The reality is I'm running marathons, I'm training hard as a mum with CF, but I'm also being sensible in knowing when to listen to my body and when to rest. I'm trying.
And just to finish off, and this is probably a huge question, I suppose, but how important has running been for you within your life? And I guess it's more than just within your life, it's in meaning that you are here and alive.
Yeah. I think for me, running is everything. Everyone that knows me knows that it's my entire personality. Yeah, I set out to do a few K, which then turned into a half marathon, which then turned into 31 and 4 marathons later. And it has taken over my soul. It is me. And I make no apologies for it being who I am, because I'm so proud. It's not just helped me physically, but mentally. It's my coping mechanism for cystic fibrosis. So if things are really dark with CF, I'll run it out. I'll run it out when I'm not feeling 100%, or when I'm feeling completely well on the days where I think this is a good day.
Yeah.
So I'm blessed. Let's get out and run.
Yeah.
So yeah, I make no apologies that it's my complete personality, and I'll never stop talking about running.
Well, Natalie, we are going to have to temporarily at least stop talking about running. But thank you so much for
Thank you
for joining me to chat about it all on Running Tales podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thanks again to Natalie for joining me on Running Tales, part of the Everyday Athlete podcast network. I hope that you enjoyed our chat just as much as I did. For me, it's one of the most fascinating, powerful stories that we've had on this podcast. Natalie's story teaches us that whatever your goal might be, and whatever life throws in your path, you have the power to reach it, the power to reach that goal, and then to do some more. Remember, if you enjoy what we do on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network, please give us a 5-star rating, a positive review, and tell all your running buddies about what we do here. Tell them to come and have a listen. Oh, and we could do with some sponsorship. All I want for Christmas is some sponsorship. Talking of the festive season, I'm now off to eat enough to justify entering another ultra in the new year, and we'll see you again on January the 7th for another running tale. Happy Christmas, have a great one, and have a fantastic new year.